Hello everyone, this is Ether Dragon, and welcome back to another episode of Fire Emblem Heroes. In this episode of the Damage Calc series, we will be taking a look at mitigation reduction specials and defense tiles and some of its quirks. So we'll get started like usual with these kind of episodes by showing some common specials under the mitigation reduction category. The three most common ones you'll see are Moonbow, Luna, and Ether. Side note, Ether is also a healing special, but you can see the similarity between these specials under the mitigation reduction section is it says treats foes defense / res as if reduced by some amount during combat. That's the main stuff that you just have to be aware of when you're looking for a mitigation reduction special. You'll also see that in stuff like Black Luna, which is exclusive to Black Knight and Zelgius. Radiant Ether here, completely exclusive to Legendary Ike, but there's also specials like Mayhem Ether on Fallen Ike that at the end of the day they're all just Ether, but they have lower base cooldown. Base Ether is 5 cooldown, whereas Radiant Ether here is 4 cooldown, but they both function the same other than that. And Legendary Alm here has Lunar Flash, which if you're familiar with special text jargon at this point, this is actually a mitigation reduction special and a boosted damage special at the same time. That's pretty cool. But now talking about how they actually work, they're pretty straightforward. All you have to do is compute the target's defense or res during combat, whichever one's applicable, and then apply the reduction as specified. So the easier ones are Luna and Ether and similar because they just reduce the foe's defense and res by 50%, aka they have the foe's defense or res. So say, for example, this Legendary Julia here, if Marth were to proc Luna against her, she has 24 defense during combat. So after having that with Luna, that's 12 defense during combat. Pretty straightforward. All the other ones like Moonbow or Black Luna just use percentages, so as we'll cover in future videos, those are still pretty darn straightforward to compute, so nothing too special there. But now, speaking of special, let's talk about defense tiles now. The very janky tiles that are actually kind of difficult to explain. It's actually just easier to explain what they do and how, rather than trying to generalize it. But in general, at this point, the community says that defense tiles buff a unit's defense and res by 30% during combat while they're on these kind of tiles. But as we'll see in a bit, that's kind of a misnomer. But in practice, it's pretty close to being correct. So for example here, if we have Marth on this defense tile here, he would get an extra 10 defense and 9 res during combat while on the defense tile, so that totals up to 46 defense and 39 res. Pretty straightforward. But it's important to note that specials like Bonfire, Ignis, Iceberg, Glacies, and other specials that base their damage off of defense and res, they do not factor in the boost from the defense tiles. So if Marth were on a defense tile, for example, and procced Bonfire on someone, and he would only deal plus 18 boosted damage because his actual defense during combat before applying the defense tile bonus is 36, so you only take half of that. So that's one nuance to be careful about. But another even jankier nuance that a lot of people are not familiar with is what happens when a unit procs a mitigation reduction special like Luna against a unit that's on a defense tile. So I know a lot of people might think that it's just a multiplicative thing where you might have to apply the defense tile bonus first and then you apply, say, Luna. That's actually incorrect. It is an additive operation. So whenever you're messing with mitigation, aka defense or res, with stuff like Luna or defense tiles, you actually have to add all the multipliers together. We'll be working with percentages here to make it easier to understand. But in practice, it's an additive thing. So to give some examples, say Sylvia here procs Moonbow. Just ignore Wodao Plus and stuff. Just purely looking at the theoretical shenanigans here. So if she were to proc Moonbow against a unit on a defense tile, you have the plus 30% bonus from the defense tile, but the minus 30% from Moonbow. So if you add those together, overall the reduction to defense and res on the target during combat is 0%. So in other words, if ignoring Wodao Plus of course, Sylvia proccing Moonbow against a unit on a defense tile is the same thing as her not proccing any special, attacking that same unit off a defense tile during combat. The computation is exactly the same in both of those scenarios. Again, ignoring Wodao Plus. To give a couple more examples, for Luna, it's a 50% reduction, aka minus 50%. So if we mess with this defense tile again, if Marth were to proc Luna against a unit on a defense tile, you have the plus 30% from the defense tile, but the minus 50% from Luna. So you add those together and overall you get minus 20%. So that combat where he procs, that attack where he procs Luna is the same thing as him attacking that same unit off the defense tile with a 20% reduction to their defense and res. And just for one last example, we have Black Luna here, which is minus 80% defense and res during combat to the target. So again, the plus 30% from the defense tile, but then the minus 80% from Black Luna gives you an overall minus 50%. So Black Knight proccing Black Luna on a unit chilling on a defense tile is actually the same thing as him proccing just Luna, this Luna, off, proccing Luna against the same unit but off the defense tile. The damage is exactly the same. Of course, I'm not going to actually show examples of that because that's going to make this video way too long. We'll be covering more of the specifics of those kind of shenanigans in future episodes where we actually mess with actual numbers and computations. This is just going to be more theoretical overview of things. But last but not least, before we end the episode here, I said towards the beginning of the episode that it was a misnomer to say that defense tiles buff a unit's defense and res by 30% during combat, and that is because it actually buffs your defense and res also before combat, as we'll see here with AoE specials. So the only thing you need to keep track here is the fact that Grant is 68 attack here with Blazing Wind, and Marth is 36 base defense. As you can see here, the AoE special is doing a base 48 damage to Marth. Just keep that in mind. Now we're going to end turn here. Now we're going to take out Sylvia just to aggro, so we can get Marth on the defense tile. Again, remember the 48 here. And now we're going to end turn. So after all the shenanigans here, Now again, same attack stat. I'll even buff her up here. So it's exactly the same stats on her. And again, Marth only has 36 defense. But here you can see that Agren's only doing 33 damage, 15 fewer points than before. And just as a quick summary of why that happens, that's because the defense tile actually buffs Marth's defense by, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, by 10 during combat. So it's actually, when you're evaluating this AoE special, he actually has 46 defense against her 68 attack. Of course, Guardian's Bow, this is a technicality. Guardian's Bow doesn't affect the AoE special because the debuffs are during combat and AoE specials are before combat. That's just a side nuance thing. But this is just to show that defense tiles are very awkward. I will eventually have to make a footnote video about defense tiles because they are so whack. But unfortunately I don't have all the units I need and skills to show all the nuances of the defense tile. But in general, this episode should give you a general understanding, pretty solid understanding of mitigation reduction specials like Moonbow and how defense tiles work and the interaction between the two. But that's going to be it for this episode. In the next episode, we're actually going into damage reduction, which is all the craze right now, so I think it's going to be a pretty relevant episode for a while. And we'll also be looking at all forms of damage reduction, so damage reduction specials like Pavis or Aegis. I know it's like Pavice, but I just say Pavis. Stuff like Close Call, Deflect Melee, anything you can think of. Stuff like Shield Pulse for just flat damage reduction. But until then, thanks for watching. As always, this is Ether Dragon, and hope to see you all next time. Bye!